Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be progressing a bit more today. I want to be getting glass, and I want to be getting steel production all set up before we finish the episode for today. But before we can do any of that, I need to go get a new ram, because if you watch the last episode of the first season, our first ram kinda went up in flames due to a little pit kill incident. Alright, it took all day and I had to clear a path, but we have a new ram. We should be able to start increasing the herd. Specifically, I want the second generation of sheep, which have more familiarity. Now, we also got a bunch of wood from clearing that path, so I'm gonna keep cooking up more charcoal for smelting, as well as putting a little stockpile here. And then we have to go get saltpeter for glass blends. While out looking for more saltpeter, I've discovered that I just need to be able to make the blocks, because interchangeably with lime, which I can just get from there, you can turn the blocks into the panes, so I don't need something for making the panes, and then everything else doesn't require special equipment. So I'm going to keep making a lit up path all the way to the mountains where I've detected some saltpeter. Alright, we've got a little bit of saltpeter here that we're going to crush down and wash. There we go. Now this will be used for our glass, as I've already said, and we just need lime and a blowpipe. So we're going to start just grinding this into the powder, which is the actual used product instead of the dust. And then we're going to work on some ironsmithing, because I want wrought iron tools. Speaking of tools, the first one we need is a new hammer to replace our one that's about to die, and then I'll just skim through the rest of the tools, because you've already watched me make, well, all the ones up to date. So, finish this off, and perfectly forged, which does give a bit of a buzz. Next is a new axe head, and a brand new wrought iron pickaxe, before taking these last two ingots, welding them up into a double ingot for a spade head, and taking a little bit of flux to cook into lime while I'm working on it. So it cooks really quickly, and this is enough for 9 batches, but I'll make enough for 18. And here's my new wrought iron spade, which again digs in a 3x3 area, 1 layer deep, before finally making my last tool, a brand new mining hammer, because my old one is almost dead. Now on to putting handles onto all of my new tools to get them ready to use. See, the spade's only expertly done. Now if you have the wrought iron hammer and the old one, you can see that it's got a little bit of durability difference. Or not. It doesn't look like it applies to wrought iron tools, only steel tools and prime tools. So, you can skip having to do the math for a wrought iron equipment, but still nice to have, I suppose. Right, with our new tools, I want to keep progressing towards steel. So, I filled 4 vessels with a stack of Cowlin clay each, which is, if you remember, what we need for fire clay. And I need to make enough fire clay bricks to produce a primitive blast furnace, which is what we'll be using, along with some coke coal, to make steel. Now, you could do this in pit kilns, which takes about 8 minutes, or you could fill up forge with charcoal and then stick all 4 vessels into a crucible, which already has a buff at heating objects up, and will smelt each stack of Cowlin clay in the vessels in about 3 minutes. So now we have to wait until there, and we probably need more graphite. So I've got my first little bit of fire clay again, while these are melting up, and we'll be using it to make the bricks. Now, something I'm realizing is, I do not have enough kaolin clay for a full set blast furnace. And I want to make some other things out of fire clay as well. So I'm gonna have to go all the way back down there to get some more. But I'm not gonna do it in a little canoe. You'll see later. Ironically, the first thing we're gonna be making with the fire clay is some casting channels, which require the blast furnace to use, but make life just so much easier once we have them, before using the next 2 batches of fire clay to make 2 sets of fire clay bricks. This is not enough, but we'll need more iron to get more. So, though 6 is enough for 1 set, we need a minimum of 4. We'll have to get more kaolin clay, because less than 2 stacks is not enough. So, off to the iron mines we go. One good thing about it is it's located under a beach made of white quartz sand, which we can actually use later for the glass. So, we're already harvesting resources, even if it is just in byproduct. Well, that took quite some time, but we finally have enough iron to actually start the next phase. And it should last us a little while, though these next phases are very iron heavy. So, we got a lot of gold byproduct that we're gonna have to store away. It'll be useful later, especially in gold drums, but right now it's not that useful to us. We've got more than 2 stacks of every gold type, almost. Yeah, we have more than 3 of every gold type. So 3.5 stacks of gold for less than a stack of each type of hematite, which is the iron that we are going to be using primarily. Along with a quick stopover at the old copper mine, finding my first ever copper mining hammer that I'll be bringing back as a kind of keepsake. But also getting enough copper to start making a little bit of brass. I then use this newly made brass along with some quartz bricks to make some plated blocks. You need these in order to form glass blocks, which we'll be using. I also grab out a bit of iron, and this could be used to make a plate right here. Finally get something better than drinking out of a clay vessel. That's right, we're gonna get an iron flask. Now using some leather, cloth, and that unfinished flask, we can get an iron flask, which stores 20 millibuckets of water, which means it is several times stronger and can store. Where the clay vessel stored about 4 blocks, this one can store up to 20 blocks of drinking water per filled use. But you can't fill it up unless it's empty. Because I screwed up and made some mud blocks, now I need to empty it before I can fill it all the way back up again. But enough playing with my flask. I take some of the brass from before, and I make a brand new glass blowing pipe. This will allow us to actually produce blocks of glass. Now with this new blowpipe, we can take some sand, lime, and saltpeter to make some silica glass batch. We can add this to the blowpipe in order to start producing glass. And with that glass, we can produce our first block of glass in this basin that we've made of brass-plated blocks. Now we'll need another tool called a gem saw to actually get the glass out. But for now, this is a good start. Before going back inside to use the iron that I welded together to make an ore lock, I'll need 2 of these, but it's a good start, as I'll be using them to go and get more kaolin clay for both glass and the blast furnace. So, after finishing that ore lock session, I decided to grind down a diamond from the graphite mine and produce the gem saw. The last tool that we're going to be using today for glass. This will allow us to actually get a glass block out of the basin in one whole piece. As we made a block of clear glass, using the saw, we can cut it open, and then using our regular saw, we can make glass planes for windows in the warehouse. I'll be setting these out after I've got a full set of them. But I'll also need to be making doors of this, and there's other options as well. But before we can work on prettying up the base, we need to actually get more supplies. So, I take 2 planks and 4 sticks to make some oars to help us travel faster. So, here we have our plan for getting more kaolin clay. By using copper bolts, we can finish off our rowboat. We just need to add the ore locks. A rowboat can hold 4 chests, along with moving faster than a canoe. So, it'll be our way of getting more kaolin clay in the future. Ah, the rowboat. Better than a canoe, but worse than a swoop. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly enough wool or other resources to actually build one of these. But maybe one day. We still have to get rubber. Gathering supplies to go off and get more kaolin clay, I finish off making 2 glass blocks to seal in the warehouse panes before I leave. This way, there won't be any icicles or any problems by the time I get back. Now that I have the building sealed in before winter, I can set up the ore locks, which complete the boat and transfer it into a physics object. I then put the 2 chests in the back storage area. There's also a seat area in the middle, but because I'm by myself, I can just swap that out for another 2 chests to have 4 chests of storage on the way out. But before we go over to get more clay, I want to clear out some more land for farming. I've already set up some crops to die in the winter so that they give more seeds, but we don't have any cropland, and our rubber tree farm right now is kind of small, so it'd be good to expand as well. This way I get to keep an eye on the animals and feed them some right before they breed, and I get to clear out some land while waiting for other things to finish. My ewe gave birth, so now it's time to set up another one. And now, finally to add the last 2 chests and head out to sea. Luckily, I can row it off the shore pretty easily. Now, it's going to be a very long journey again, and I want to leave with at least a couple chests of kaolin clay, so it's going to be a long time down there. And another thing I'd like to address, if it looks like I'm jumping around a lot, not focusing on the main things for today, it's because I am. Everything in this pack takes a lot of time. It's been several months already since the start of this video, and this whole journey is going to take at least a week to go all the way from up here, all the way across the ocean, grab up the sand at that middle island, and then go further down to get the clay. Speaking of the island, through the power of editing, I'm already there with a good stack. And there's that tiger that I saw the last time. I can get a pelt from here. Now, the chance to get a pelt from just using an axe or other weapon is substantially lower, but I roll the dice here, looking to try and get a predator hide to fill out this quest reward. As you can see, there is a tiger fur. So, going into the fight, I was hoping to get the rare drop. And this thing, even in peaceful mode, will still kill you very quickly. But I don't get the drop. I'll need a cleaver, and then I'll probably be able to get one from a crocodile down at the clay mines. Now on the south coastline, where we found the last bit of clay, we found some new crops too, some tomatoes. I also find more wild jute, and I picked up some soybeans on the way as well. But in the end, that's not what we came here for. Cowlin clay is. And it took all day, but I finally found another batch. From this first part, I thought that it would be small, and that I'd have to find another node. But it ended up being massive. It must have been at least 4 chunks of the spawn in a row, all packed together in one layer. So I should be going home with a good amount of it. And here's the haul. A couple chests of Cowlin clay. Fall out of the boat because it is still an entity. As well as some regular clay, some crops, and a new nice rosewood that I can use for building. It's a nice deep red. Finally, back at home, I can start making some volcanic glass blend. This will produce the blue glass that I want for the cellar controller that I've been working on passively in the last couple of episodes. I even finished making the gears out of some more brass. This will leave just one more thing before we can get the cellar up and running that'll preserve food for a lot longer. But we can't get what we need to finish it off, at least not in this episode. I ponder some cheese making. Once we have a cellar, we can actually make and age cheese down in it. But that'll be a while still. But ever onward. Looking at the blast furnace recipe, we need a crucible. Now we do have one, but I would like to still have one, so we're gonna have to make a new one. That and about 16 plates of wrought iron. Well, 16 ingots worth of plates. Later on, we'll have a much cheaper plate recipe, but that's still going to be a while. I feel like I've said that throughout most of this, but that is basically just this pack. During the early game, everything takes time, and the late game is all about getting as much time back as you can through recipes that can take, in real life, literal hours to complete, if you do them wrong enough. So, back to the job, crushing down graphite dust into powder for more combining ingredients, and cooking up stacks of Cowlin clay, even if that means filling up individual slots of more clay while the vessels heat up. And with a substantial amount of fire clay, I start making even more channels. We'll need a lot of these for proper automation. I then make a fire table. This is where the actual mold for automation goes into. I'm gonna make 2 for now, but I'll also increase this in the future. I set the new crucible, the tables, and the molds all to smelt. Now, by using the bellows, I can actually heat it up fast enough to cook the new crucible and all of its other ingredients to being finished without needing a pit kiln. I then start working on making more fireclay bricks. These will be the real backbone and limiting factor. The more of these I make, the larger of a blasting furnace I can make, at least for now. Now, taking the cured bricks and some mortar, I can make 3 fire bricks. Now, they make in 2s, so this will be enough for 1 level. If I want to expand, I'll need 2 more fire bricks, which means more Cowlin processing. But this is enough to start. I then take the time to make some beer. I'll be using this to make vinegar, because in my opinion, that's really the only thing beer is good for. And yes, this is a hill I will die on, because rum is superior. But picking fights with strangers aside, there's still work to do. Right now, I'm waiting on my iron blooms to finish processing on the Helvhammer. So, I'm going back into the land I cleared out to fill it in with more loam dirt. We can use this for farmland, but I'm also going to have a windmill here that will actually be functional. And I'm going to have a bee farm as well as a kitchen. This will be our little food area. I just have to remember how to decorate it, or, well, come up with a new theme to decorate it in. Also take some time to start setting up the channels and mold tables, along with the old crucible for the new blast furnace. Right now, it's going to be built as a minimum level blast furnace, but by adding more fire bricks above it, we can increase the size over time. I also find these molds here that I should be able to put into the casting molds to cast plates. Hey there, yeah. I don't find this out until later, but you cannot in fact put these molds into the mold tables. You just have to put proper ingot form molds in there. And I don't find this out until well past this episode. But just in case someone was following along, do not follow this mold recipe, you will just be wasting steel at this point. Okay, back to more relatively live commentation. While checking the wrought iron recipes, I see blast furnace insulation. I thought that the blocks were already insulated, but no. You need to make this to finish them. So I'll need 3 plates per block, which increases our minimum amount by 12 plates, each needing 2 ingots. So 24 more ingots of wrought iron before we can finish the blast furnace. And you know what that means. Placing more dirt while I wait for things to finish. In all seriousness, I do need to get this area finished as well. It's just not as time sensitive as the main topic video. So it's good to do this in between while I'm waiting for things. This and figuring out how bees work. I run out of dirt, I try to break progression a bit. Usually you need a centrifuge or to find raw redstone ore. I try to beat the system by using crushed electrine ore, but as I only have the basic millstone, it doesn't give me any redstone. Because I missed the tooltip that says that these are locked behind low voltage. So instead, I just get electrine dust. This, the centrifuge, is what I actually need, but it's locked behind material composite board and some other expensive parts that I can't make quite yet. So, rather disappointingly, I go back to harvest crops with a hoe. These dead crops give a chance of extra seeds, if you let them get to full strength before harvesting them in the winter when they die off. We didn't get that lucky with the beets, but we have gotten lucky with other crops, and this wheat and other crops here give us a good amount of seeds. But finally, with a crucible and the 8 double plates I had to make, I can finally make the blast furnace. This is the core of the project, but I still need the insulation before it's finished. The beer's finally finished. Now to have chunks of fruit in order to ferment it into vinegar. The only good use for beer. Well, I must have certainly ticked someone off with my last comments about beer, because while coming back from getting lime, I fall down one of my test tunnels that I used to get the graphite. It's gonna be a long walk back. Okay, I just need to... Again? Well, 2 deaths later and a lot of ladders, I finally have the flux that I wanted to get to keep welding. And I'll be able to finish off the insulation rather quickly. Now finally back at the base, my vinegar's finished, which means I can use seawater to turn it into brine, which can be used to preserve meat and other food. With this, vinegar is used in much less quantity than seawater, which means For all of that beer, we have almost an entire barrel of vinegar left, plus the brine. And with a bit of a time skip, the last of the blast furnace insulation is completed, so I can put some flux back into the anvil and finish out the blast furnace. Luckily, adding the insulation is simple. Just place down the fire bricks, and you add the insulation to the blocks directly. Now this does look a little goofy floating, but as you can see there's inputs, outputs, and it's fully formed. Now we just need an internal part, and we'll be ready to start making pig iron, which is the precursor to steel. I also add some ladders as well as a bellows. If you have this pointing in facing towards the actual blast furnace itself, it can actually get hot enough to do its job, but without it, it's not very useful. I finish up with making the best tuyere I can out of wrought iron. This is the actual funnel inside of a blast furnace that concentrates the air. By using this and coke coal, we can get it hot enough and combine it with enough carbon to go from wrought iron or high carbon iron into actual steel. Now, by combining any type of iron with flux, we get the metal blend. Combine that with 4 coke fuel up at the top, and all you need to do is actually light the furnace with, in this case, a fire stick, and it'll start baking. Now, as it raises in temperature, we're going to have to keep using this bellows, which will burn through more fuel quickly, but also raise the temperature. We can just come on top and throw more coke fuel onto the fire to keep producing more. Now that the pig iron's actually melted and poured into the crucible underneath, it doesn't connect directly up to the mold system yet. For that, we need a pump, which we can get with steel. For right now, I set up a little forge temporarily underneath the crucible. This way we can cast manually from the crucible into ingot forms to get our first little bit of pig iron, which we can convert to steel. The new crucible also needs a bellows to get up hot enough to actually smelt down the pig iron that's in it so that we can cast it out. But that's just lever and planks, rather cheap compared to the rest of this project. Now with things heated up properly, I go and make my first bits of pig iron. This becomes high carbon steel and then regular steel. We'll need 14 ingots because I want to make the anvil before I say that we have steel marked off for the day. I then take that pigged iron down to the Helvhammer. It can finish the process in the same way that it does the wrought iron. So I can skip having to manually produce these. But it requires an iron anvil, so I have to take the old bronze anvil back up to the manual forge for just a bit of time until we get the steel one set up. Coming back to it after a bit, and it's already made 2 steel ingots. That means that the whole process should be finished relatively quickly. But while I wait for that to finish off, I make a bunch of gold ingots for more gold drums. This will allow us to store much more creosote, and actually stockpile it for the next phase of work. I also place a bunch more logs and strip them, as I've been working on making more water wheels in the background. A bunch of plates and rods later, I've got a brand new golden tank, along with one I've crafted earlier. This should more than triple our storage capacity. I start storing the full drums over at the side of the building, and putting up a new empty drum after filling up the second new drum. I also take a leather tunic I made earlier and insulate it. This should help with the cold now that winter's setting in properly. And I don't need to be wearing this armor all the time, a safe region like my home one. Then I use some excess cloth to start making some cheese curds. This will allow me to start actually making cheese and getting dairy into my diet to increase my health back up. Right now, we can only make one type of cheese, but if we had other animals, we could make a larger variety. The 2 batches of meat I set in to brine have finally finished. I can replace it with fruits and other things to preserve them for longer. I then take some salt along with the cheese curds that I made in the barrel and make 2 wheels of cheddar cheese. These don't even stack. And now I can take them down to the cellar, even though it's not quite finished yet, so they won't age. They also won't rot down there. I place both of them down and take a little slice for myself. I'll have this entire wall section here that I've left specifically for cheese filled up soon enough. But enough distractions. By taking 2 steel ingots, I can weld them together and get to work on making the next tier of anvil. I even made some extra pig iron so I can show you the process of making steel. It goes into a pale bluish ingot and then finally to steel. So it's just like iron blues with it having 2 processes before being finished. And we can keep welding more ingots to finish up our anvil. And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen, a full steel anvil. Now this will allow us to work steel into tools and other resources. So I'm going to put this inside on the manual side. I'll have to move the old bronze anvil. Now, carrying 2 anvils, you cannot move at all. So I'm going to have to throw that out for a second while I place this up. But here we have it, a full steel anvil. And the whole process to get as much steel as we want. So, thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be moving on to black steel next.